You people will fake anything to feel important. The words didn't drop, they detonated. Claudia Remington's voice rang through the gala like a shattered champagne flute. Her red dress clung to her like pride, and her laugh echoed across the ballroom just as the quartet hit a quiet interlude. Ava Monroe didn't move. She didn't flinch, didn't lower her gaze, didn't offer an explanation. She simply held out her titanium card, flat in her palm, as a white-gloved event coordinator leaned forward to inspect it, hesitating, as if it might bite. Across the table, Claudia pointed at the card and sneered, louder this time. "I told you, it's fake." The tension didn't build. It spiked. Forks paused mid-air. Conversations stalled. Someone near the back whispered, "Did she just say that?" Ava sat still. Back straight, eyes calm. The card didn't move. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here." Now back to Ava. To everyone else, she looked forgettable. Plain ivory gown, no bodyguards, no designer clutch, no diamond necklace announcing net worth, just skin like certainty and silence like strategy. Claudia leaned across her husband, chuckling as if the room had sided with her already. "Come on, honey, let's not pretend we're at the same table." She turned to the event coordinator, gray-haired, headset on. "Verify it, or escort her." A middle-aged man beside Claudia shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but said nothing. The waiter next to Ava stood awkward, eyes darting between the card and the accusations. The problem wasn't volume, it was confidence. The way Claudia said, "you people," like it was common knowledge. The way her voice cut through the white roses and candlelight like a rusted blade. Ava blinked once, slow, then nodded. "You want it verified?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "The same way a storm does right before it breaks." Claudia smirked, tipping back her champagne. "Yes, and when they find out it's fake, I expect a formal apology or an exit." Ava didn't reply. She turned her head slightly to the man behind her in a tuxedo, wearing a discreet earpiece. He nodded once and took the card. The ballroom didn't breathe. And for the first time that evening, the string quartet stopped playing. Ava Monroe didn't need an invitation. She funded the event. Table 6 sat just left of center, close enough to the stage for donors, far enough for discretion. 10 seats, 9 names that mattered to someone, and 1 no one recognized. That was the point. Ava had walked in alone. No entourage, no fanfare, no one announcing, "Here comes the woman who owns 7.2% of the entire Ritz Carlton portfolio." Instead, she chose a different kind of entrance, quiet, calculated. Herr RSVP, Marquette Investor Liaison. Her dress? Simple ivory, timeless, not showy. Her jewelry? None. Because tonight wasn't about recognition. It was about observation. The gala honored the Remington Foundation's hotel renovation initiative, a PR move masked as philanthropy. Ava had reviewed the financials weeks ago. It wasn't charity, it was asset flipping. Still, she let them shine. Let them rent chandeliers high enough to forget who paid for them. Let Claudia strut through the ballroom as if her husband's net worth had transferred to her soul. And now, here they were. Claudia, in red silk, with a laugh loud enough to pierce crystal. Ava, still seated, still poised, watching the room shift. She'd chosen not to correct the coordinator when he asked, "And who invited you, ma'am?" She'd chosen not to hand over her Forbes profile when the host mispronounced her name. She didn't even blink when someone mistook her for part of the catering staff during cocktail hour. Because power doesn't need confirmation. It just needs timing. And Ava had mastered the clock, Claudia hadn't, because in exactly 12 minutes, she would regret ever raising her voice at table 6. But for now, Ava just Saturday, calm, unmoving, and let the room judge her silence. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see a second form of ID." The voice came from a man with a clipboard and a laminated badge. Event Operations Manager, printed just above a logo that Ava herself had approved for funding 6 months ago. He stood stiff in posture, but his tone dripped out. Behind him, Claudia folded her arms and smiled like she'd just won something. Ava didn't rise. She slid her original ID across the linen-clothed table without a word. The man glanced at it, then squinted. "This name, it's not in our database. You were added late?" A pause. Across the room, a waiter hovered uncertainly, whispering something into his earpiece. A beat later, a second staffer approached with a tablet in hand. "I can double-check," she said quickly. "We've had some guest syncing issues with the new system." But the operations manager didn't wait. He turned slightly, angled his shoulder toward Ava like a shield, and whispered just loud enough for the people behind him to hear, "She's not a donor, not a Remington, not staff." Then louder, "We'll have to verify her credentials before she's served anything further." 2 seats over, someone coughed. Another guest reached for their wine just to have something to do. Claudia leaned in again, feigning concern. "It's okay. These things happen. Sometimes people wander in from the lobby." Someone laughed. Not at Ava, not yet. But at the idea of her. That was enough. Ava finally spoke. "Would you prefer I leave now or wait for the system to catch up?" The manager hesitated. He didn't expect her to answer. Certainly not with poise. Certainly not with that voice measured, unbothered, sharper than any insult Claudia could throw. He stammered, I'll get clearance from upstairs." Claudia interjected, "Maybe security should handle this. We had someone sneak into the donor lounge last year." That got a few heads to turn. A man across the aisle, tall, silver hair, tuxedo classic, set his drink down and said flatly, "You're making a scene. Claudia Spoon. Excuse me?" He didn't blink. "She's sitting. You're shouting." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was electric. The kind that made people shift in their chairs and suddenly remember their manners. Ava stayed silent. The female staffer with the tablet finally looked up, hesitating. "Her name is in the system," she said, voice low. "Investor liaison. Cleared for top-tier access." The manager's face froze. Claudia wasn't done. "Investor what?" she snapped. "You expect us to believe that? That someone like her just quietly funds galas?" She didn't say it, but she did. Someone like her. Ava stood. Not fast, not dramatic, just deliberate. She looked at the manager, then at the staffer, then at Claudia. "I've been patient." Her voice was calm, measured. "But when you start announcing who belongs and who doesn't," she looked down at her untouched flute of champagne, "you're not protecting the event. You're revealing it." One woman at the next table nodded slowly, eyes never leaving Ava. Another guest pulled out their phone, camera facing downward, but recording light on. The air was shifting. The room could feel it. The gala hadn't turned chaotic. It had turned real. Ava didn't argue. She could have listed every investment she made in the last 18 months, every suite renovated under her fund, every executive trained through her program. She could have summoned a team of advisors, legal reps, PR handlers. But she didn't. She just stood there. Still, composed. Like someone who'd faced this before because she had. Back when she was 26, carrying a second-hand laptop into boardrooms full of men who only saw her earring. Back when she waited in lobbies for meetings that mysteriously vanished once they saw her shoes. And now here she was again. Zame Tone, Zame Assumption, different chandelier. The female staffer who'd confirmed her name was now silent, eyes glued to the floor. The operations manager cleared his throat, then turned to Claudia like a dog waiting for a command. Claudia laughed, short and sharp. "I mean, it's not my fault your system's too loose. Maybe next time vet the attendees better." She was still talking to the room, not to Ava, but Ava was done listening. She looked at Claudia not with anger, not even disdain. Pity. As if she saw something no one else had bothered to. Across the table, a younger man, early 30s, conference badge still hanging from his tux, leaned to his wife and whispered, "This is messed up." His wife nodded. "That woman's done nothing wrong." 2 tables back, a woman in a green dress raised her phone, not high, not obvious, but enough. The gala wasn't quiet anymore. It was tense, the kind of silence where every glass clink sounds like a threat, where every glance means more than it should. Ava sat back down, deliberately. She didn't need to stand to hold the room. The room had already shifted. Someone near the sound booth muttered to the coordinator, "Should we step in?" He shook his head. "Not yet. Let her speak first." But Ava didn't speak. She picked up her champagne, didn't sip, just held it. Claudia scoffed again, turning to her husband who still hadn't said a word. "Honestly, Richard, this is what happens when we lower standards. You get A situations." Richard didn't respond. He stared at Ava, not rudely, just long enough to feel it. Then finally said, "Do you hear yourself?" The words landed like a verdict. Someone gasped. Claudia blinked. What? But the attention had shifted. It wasn't about proof anymore, or cards, or seating charts. It was about tone, and tone had already lost the room. Ava placed her flute down, folded her hands, and waited. It started with a flicker, a red light blinking just above a lapel. Discreet, steady. A young man near the bar had started recording. He wasn't loud, he wasn't even obvious, but the light on his blazer button said enough. The whisper came next. Are you getting this? Every word, someone replied. And then clarity, a soft but firm voice from behind the table, behind the curtains, behind the system. Ma'am, she belongs here. Heads turned. It was the woman with the tablet, the one who confirmed Ava's name. She took one step forward. Her voice was shaking, but her words weren't. Investor liaison, Ava Monroe. I saw the name when we loaded the access tier this morning. Top-level clearance. Silence. Then Claudia, smiling, eyes cold. And how long have you worked here, sweetie? The woman blinked. 3 years. Then act like it, Claudia snapped. That broke something. A kid gasped. Then a voice, male, deeper, firm, just a few feet away. Don't speak to her like that. It came from a guest seated behind Claudia. Middle-aged, black suit, wedding band glinting under the chandelier. He wasn't yelling. He was simply done. She's doing her job. You're the one who's made this ugly. Claudia turned, flüsterte. Excuse me? But he wasn't looking at her anymore. His eyes were on Ava. Respectful, direct. You okay, ma'am? Ava nodded. Still seated, still silent. The staffer with the tablet took another step forward. I updated the system myself. Miss Monroe's credentials came through corporate, verified through 3 layers. I can show you the back-end logs. The operations manager's face drained. That won't be necessary. But it is, she replied. Her voice no longer shook. Because you all stood here questioning her presence, and I'm the one who let it happen. Ava looked at her. Just a glance. And for the first time that evening, she smiled. Not wide, not sweet, just enough. Like a spark in a powder room, someone at a nearby table whispered, Who is she? A waiter leaned over and answered. Voice hushed. I think she owns part of this. A second guest stood up, not marching, not dramatic, just stood, holding her phone. I'm recording now. Because this isn't a misunderstanding anymore. And just like that, the shift solidified. The room had stopped watching Ava. Now, it was watching itself. The crowd had shifted. Eyes turned, backs straightened, cameras steadied, and just when it seemed like accountability had found its voice, he walked in. Richard Foster, Regional Director of Ritz Hospitality, tailored tux, signature lapel pin, microphone still clipped from his earlier speech. He didn't smile. He walked straight toward the commotion, whispering something to the coordinator before facing the crowd. We've reviewed the situation. His voice was low but designed to cut through noise. And while we appreciate everyone's concern, I need to clarify something. He looked at Ava, then back at the room. Miss Monroe is not listed as a priority guest for this evening's ceremony. The air snapped. A hum of disbelief passed through the tables like static. Claudia grinned like she'd just been validated by God himself. Ava didn't move. The young staffer with the tablet took a step forward. Sir, with respect, she's listed under the corporate back-end Tier A clearance. Foster shook his head. That access wasn't communicated through our event protocol team, and as such, he glanced at Claudia, at the operations manager, at the gathering storm of phones and quiet rage. We'll be asking Miss Monroe to vacate the donor section until proper credentials can be reconfirmed. A single beat. Then the man in the black suit from earlier stood again. She showed you her ID. Another voice from the side. You just denied someone who funded this building. Claudia rose now, too, eyes dancing. If this is about optics, she can stay. But let's not pretend she's earned a seat here. A gasp. Then quiet. Then Ava stood. Finally. No anger, no panic. Just precision. You're very confident about that. She didn't need to raise her voice, because now the cameras were up, and this wasn't about hospitality anymore. It was about exposure. The room wasn't quiet anymore. It was volatile. Phones were rolling. Whispers had become questions, and questions were becoming sides. Ava hadn't spoken since standing. She didn't need to. The silence around her said more than any argument ever could. And then Claudia, riding the momentum, leaned over to Richard Foster and whispered something, low but urgent. He nodded once, too quickly. then turned to the coordinator, voice sharp. Disable her credential access. Right now. Ugh. The words were ice in a glass of fire. The woman with the tablet stepped forward. Sir, that's not protocol. I need a dual confirmation from corporate or legal. Override it, Foster snapped. She's no longer verified, until we say otherwise. The young woman froze. Behind her, another staffer had already begun tapping furiously on a secondary screen. Do it, Claudia added. Louder now. Before this becomes a bigger scene. The operations manager returned, holding Ava's titanium event card. But this time, he didn't hand it back. He held it up, looked at Foster, then with one deliberate motion snapped it in two. Gasps echoed. A champagne flute shattered somewhere near table 12. Ava's expression didn't change, but the guests around her did. The man in the black suit muttered, "That's theft." The woman in the green dress dropped her napkin, stood, and said aloud, "Did he just destroy her credentials?" Foster raised a hand. "This is private property. We have the right to remove access at any time." A guest 3 tables over called out, "You just humiliated an investor in front of 100 witnesses." No response. Because now, security had begun walking toward Ava. 2 men, matching earpieces, firm steps. One reached for her shoulder. Ava didn't move, but her voice for the first time rose slightly. "Touch me again and I'll make sure the board sees the footage before the night ends." The guard paused, looked at Foster. Foster hesitated, and in that pause, everything cracked. Because the room wasn't watching Ava anymore. It was watching how far they'd go to silence her. Ava didn't yell. She didn't even look at the guards. She simply raised her wrist, tapped once on the face of her watch, and spoke quietly. "Lena, initiate protocol 8. No one understood what that meant, but the word protocol landed like a flare in the dark. The guards stepped back. Not much, but just enough. A reflex, like animals sensing something unnatural in the room. Claudia laughed nervously. "What is this? Some kind of bluff?" The sound of a phone vibrating broke the tension. Then another, and another. 3 executives at table 2 pulled out their phones almost in sync. One of them frowned. The next turned pale. The third stood up. "Excuse me, I need to make a call." Then 2 hotel staff near the hallway conferred in hushed tones, one showing the other a screen. The second nodded, then walked away fast. Richard Foster checked his own phone. His face shifted, slightly, but enough. "What is this?" he muttered. Ava looked at him, calm, still holding the broken card. "It's what happens when you try to erase someone who built the floor you're standing on." Ugh. Another notification dinged this time from a wall-mounted panel behind the bar. The event lighting dimmed. Subtly, but intentionally. Then a voice came through the PA system. Not loud, not theatrical, just final. "Attention. Internal board alert has been triggered. Operations lockdown in effect." People looked around. "What the hell is a board alert?" someone whispered. Claudia stepped back. "What did you do?" Ava finally moved. She turned to the staffer with the tablet. "Check my clearance now." Shaking slightly, the woman did. Her breath caught. Then, almost too soft to hear, level black. A hush swept the room. That clearance didn't exist. Or so they thought. Ava looked at Foster. "Now, do you want to try that again?" Ava stepped forward. Not rushed, not dramatic, but every step landed like punctuation. The ballroom just moments ago, a scene of control had gone still. She reached the center of the room, then turned slowly. Eyes met hers. Some questioning, some ashamed, others simply stunned. She looked toward Claudia first. "You wanted names." Her voice was low, clear. "Fine. Ava Monroe, founder of LuxCore Systems, lead architect behind Ritz's digital concierge infrastructure, and majority silent shareholder in this entire East Coast renovation." A pause. "That includes tonight's venue." Claudia's mouth parted. No words. Ava turned to Foster. "The system you checked? I funded it. The protocol you ignored? I wrote it. The wall you leaned against when you dismissed me?" She pointed toward the entrance. "There's a plaque by the doorway. Go read it." A staffer in the corner had already moved. Moments later, his voice came across the room, cracked, half-whispered. "Dedicated to Ava Monroe for vision, excellence, and founding capital support." Gasps. Someone near the front muttered, "Oh my God." Another said, "I've seen her in Forbes. I thought the photo was edited." The tablet-holding staffer dropped her gaze in disbelief. One of the security guards took a half step back. But Ava wasn't finished. She turned to the crowd, not just Claudia or Foster, but everyone who had seen and said nothing. You watched me be questioned, mocked, stripped of my identity. And only when power re-entered the room did your eyes adjust. A camera flashed. Then another. The room wasn't just recording her anymore. It was witnessing correction. Ava breathed in. I came here tonight to remain invisible, to listen, to understand how far we'd really come. Now I know. She turned toward Claudia one last time. You thought I wanted a seat at the table, but I own the table. Then she walked back to her chair, and this time no one dared speak. The apology came fast. Then another. Then a scramble. Claudia's red heels clacked frantically against the marble floor as she rushed after Ava. Wait, Miss Monroe, this was all a mistake. Ava didn't slow down. She didn't even look back. I didn't know who you were, Claudia pressed, her voice now brittle. I thought you were. Richard said your name wasn't on the list. She turned, desperately scanning the crowd for someone to back her up. You said she wasn't cleared, she barked toward Foster. Foster adjusted his cufflinks anything to keep from making eye contact. That's what the access dashboard showed. The back-end sync must have... Back-end? Claudia hissed. Are you seriously blaming software? The operations manager, now standing off to the side, raised both hands, clearly wanting no part in the blame. No one gave me her full title, he mumbled. All I saw was liaison and assumed. Exactly, Ava said, cutting in for the first time. She still hadn't turned, but her voice was clear enough to stop every whisper. You assumed. Silence. The young staffer with the tablet took a trembling step forward. I was just doing what I was told, she said quietly. We were told to monitor unknown access tiers closely and... Ava finally turned to face her. Unknown to whom? The girl blinked, then looked down. She knew. Everyone did. They didn't check, because they thought they knew enough. A guest near the back tall, with a glass of bourbon in hand, spoke up. She sat there quietly for half an hour. And you all spun a narrative. Another nodded. You destroyed her card. You brought out security. What were you protecting? No answer. Claudia tried again. Look, I made a poor judgment, but we've all been under pressure tonight. Pressure didn't make you cruel, Ava said sharply. Comfort did. The words landed like a slap. Claudia recoiled slightly, her hands grasping at the air like she could take the moment back. Foster, realizing the tide had fully turned, tried to regain footing. Miss Monroe, if we had been properly briefed. Ava cut him off. You don't get to use if anymore. You had every chance to ask. You didn't. She stepped forward, not toward them, toward the room. What happened tonight isn't rare. It's repeated. In boardrooms, in gala halls, in airports. Every time someone decides what power looks like before they ask where it comes from. She paused. The air was heavy, weighted with recognition. You weren't wrong about my silence. You were wrong to think it meant I had nothing to say. Someone clapped. Soft. Once. Then a second person joined in, and then the room erupted. Not in loud cheers, but a solemn, rhythmic applause. Claudia turned toward the exit. Foster followed, but Ava? She didn't move, because now they couldn't look away. The applause faded, not because people stopped clapping, but because Ava raised one hand, and the room obeyed. She walked calmly toward the center stage. No need for the spotlight now. She was the spotlight. Picking up the mic again, she didn't look around for permission. She was done waiting for rooms to catch up. Thank you, she began. Not soft, not polite, just exact. I want to thank the Remington Foundation and Ritz Carlton events for tonight's demonstration. Murmurs, nervous laughter, no smiles. It reminded me that power, when left unchecked, will always try to shrink the space of those who built it. A pause. She looked toward the side of the stage where two men in suits had just entered from the back hallway, both whispering frantically into their phone. They were too late. As of this moment, Ava continued, LuxCorp Holdings will begin the process of withdrawing all financial support from the Ritz East Coast Redevelopment Initiative. Gasps. Not from the audience. From the donors. A man at table 4 sat bolt upright. A woman near the front pulled off her headset and mouthed, "Oh my God." Ava wasn't finished. Our $4.1 billion equity investment across the hospitality and smart tech infrastructure sectors previously committed over the next 8 fiscal quarters will be restructured and redirected. The event coordinator dropped his clipboard. Effective immediately, she added. We are initiating Clause 7B of the investor agreement, which terminates all active development contracts without penalty to our firm. Claudia, still frozen near the middle aisle, looked as though the floor had tilted under her heels. Foster? Gone, slipped out during the applause. But there was no exit from this. Ava looked out at the sea of stunned faces. Some of you may be wondering, isn't that too harsh? She smiled, calm, cold. Ask yourselves this. If a person can be erased that easily, imagine what you would have done to her company. Silence. Then, a voice from the back. What happens to the projects already underway? Ava looked over. They'll survive. Not because of this institution, but because we built redundancies, partnerships that don't require approval from people who mistake presence for power. Another hand went up. Miss Monroe, will you be reallocating those funds elsewhere? Ava tilted her head. Yes, toward entities that understand equity is more than a line item, toward teams that don't need to be reminded who invited them in. She let that hang, then placed the mic down again. But this time, the silence was different. It wasn't awkward. It was reverent. She stepped off the stage. Guests parted without needing to be asked. Stuff stood still. And Claudia sank into a chair she didn't belong to, surrounded by all the things she thought made her untouchable. Ava didn't look back. Because when you've said what needs to be said and done what no one expected, you don't owe the room anything else. The sound of her heels echoed in threes. 1, 2, 3, measured. Clean, like punctuation marking the end of something vast. Ava Monroe was leaving. The ballroom, once filled with noise, now felt hollow like a stage after the curtain had dropped, but the audience hadn't moved. She didn't wave, didn't gloat, didn't need to. She had already done what she came to do. At the exit, a hotel manager held the door open with trembling hands. He didn't speak, and she didn't nod. Respect doesn't always need acknowledgement. Sometimes, silence is the bow. Just as her heel touched the last tile before the lobby, Miss Monroe? Ava stopped, turned. A girl stood just outside the velvet barrier. 14, maybe 15. Hair pulled back tight, dressed 2 sizes too formal for her frame. She clutched a program in one hand, and a pen in the other, shaking. Behind her, a woman, her mother, perhaps stood stiff, unsure if she should interrupt. I saw what they did, the girl said. Voice low, but not uncertain. I just wanted to say thank you for not yelling. Ava tilted her head. They expected me to. The girl nodded. But you didn't, and they all listened. A long pause passed between them. Then, could I maybe get a picture? Ava considered, not the request, but the reason. This wasn't about fanfare. This was about documentation. Proof that someone who looked like her could command a room by not performing for it. She stepped forward. The girl beamed. The flash was quick, quiet. The mother mouthed a thank you. As Ava turned to leave again, the girl whispered one last thing. They'll never forget your name. 6 hours later. The first clip hit Twitter at 12:42 a.m. By 1:03, it had 1.2 million views. By dawn, it was global. 3 camera angles, 1 audio overlay, subtitles in 4 languages. The caption? They tried to erase her. She deleted their budget instead. Number, investor not guest. Number, Ava owns the room. Number, we remember Ava. 2 hours later, Richard Foster, suspended, pending review. Claudia's foundation website, down for maintenance. Ritz Carlton HQ released a formal statement. We are conducting a full investigation into the events of last night and reaffirm our commitment to inclusive leadership representation across our investor partnerships. But the internet wasn't waiting for statements. It was building something else. A movement. Clips of Ava's line. You weren't wrong about my silence. You were wrong to think it meant I had nothing to say. We're now being used in lectures, podcasts, even TikTok duets. A remix dropped that night. It hit Spotify top 200 inches 2 days. 2 weeks later, Ava had not given a single interview. She declined all press, refused all late-night invites, ignored requests from every business magazine that had once buried her profile below 10 tech bros to watch. She didn't chase narratives. She let the moment breathe. And yet things moved. Ritz stock dropped 3.8% that quarter. Investor meetings got rescheduled. 3 board members resigned quietly, citing philosophical misalignment. But Ava? She flew to Nairobi for a panel on venture equity in underserved regions. Then Berlin, then New Orleans, and always in silence. Because real power doesn't tour, it plants. Claudia, gone from the circuit. Still hosting small galas, sure, but nothing televised, nothing headline. She tried rebranding. More neutral tones, less red silk, more charity language. But everywhere she went, someone whispered, "Isn't she the one who said someone like her?" One time, a waiter at a private event asked her if she was on the guest list. She didn't laugh. The room? It changed. Not immediately. But the next gala had new protocols. Guest lists reviewed twice. Security briefed on silent tier investors. Staff trained to never assume. And above the entrance, mounted in brushed black brass, "To those who enter quietly and leave entirely seen." A.M. Some paused to read it. Some looked away. But no one ignored it. A rooftop in Lisbon. Late afternoon sun. Ava sits alone. No glam squad. No entourage. No noise. Just stillness. And power. Lena, her assistant, steps forward holding a tablet. "We've completed withdrawal from all active Ritz portfolios. The full $4.1 B reallocation is in motion. Dozens of partnerships want to meet. You're trending in 61 countries. Ava doesn't react, just sips her espresso. Lena waits. Then, "They're asking what you want to say next." Ava looks out at the Atlantic. Smiles not for the camera, for herself. Then, calm and final, "Nothing." Fade out.